And the ink wasn't just ink. It was the necrotic fluid of a wasted life, dripping onto the page, solidifying into a lie you have repeated to yourself every morning in the mirror for the last 10 years. You wake up, you drink the caffeine, you endure the commute, you sit in the gray box. You convince yourself that the friction, the resistance, the sheer grinding agony of doing something you loathe is proof of your virtue. You have been infected by a pathogen of the mind so pervasive, so absolute, that you mistake your symptoms for ambition. We are not here to discuss laziness. We are here to perform an autopsy on the Protestant work ethic. We are here to look at the grave of Henry Charles Bukowski, specifically the 2 words etched into the stone that people misinterpret as a nihilistic shrug, when in reality they are a desperate warning siren screaming from the underworld. Don't try. But before we descend into the 4 layers of this psychological architecture, before we dissect the rot in the floorboards of your daily routine, you need to understand something terrifying. There is a psychological mechanism, a specific cognitive trap identified in classified behavioral studies from the mid-1960s, studies that were buried because they threatened the very engine of the global economy, that proves your hard work triggers the same neural pathways as self-harm. We will get to the San Pedro patient, the man who broke the conditioning. But first, I have to tell you about the box. And I'm not talking about a cubicle. I'm talking about a mental prison you entered willingly when you were 6 years old. And the key to the lock is the very thing you are most afraid to stop doing. Keep that in your mind. The key is the fear. We will return to the box at the end. If you leave before then, you remain inside it. Let us begin the incision. The world is obsessed with the narrative of the ascent, the Rocky Balboa montage, the Elon Musk sleepless night, the mythology that human value is calculated by the amount of suffering one can endure in the pursuit of a goal. We are taught that the universe operates on a transactional basis: input pain, output success. But when you look at the life of Charles Bukowski, particularly the 12 years he spent rotting inside the Terminal Annex post office in Los Angeles, you see a counter-narrative that is so dangerous to the status quo that it is often dismissed as the ramblings of a drunk. It isn't. It is high-level philosophical resistance. Bukowski didn't write because he worked hard. He wrote because the alternative was suicide. The distinction is critical. Most of you are operating under the sunk cost fallacy of existence. You believe that because you have suffered for a path, you must continue walking it. Otherwise, the suffering was in vain. This is the logic of a gambler who has lost the deed to his house and thinks the next hand will solve it. Bukowski looked at the hand, saw the game was rigged, and flipped the table. But he didn't just flip it, he vomited on it. Consider the post office era, 1952 to 1955, and then again from 1958 to 1969. A sorting clerk, code 4, a machine made of meat. He described it as a place where the soul goes to be processed, stamped, and shipped away. The environment was designed to break the individual will. This is not poetic license. Industrial psychology in the 1950s was heavily focused on scientific management, the Taylorist method of maximizing efficiency by removing human autonomy. They wanted you to be a robot. Bukowski was a glitch in that software. He saw men die there, not physically, though that happened too, heart attacks between the mail sacks, but metaphysically. He watched the light go out behind their eyes, and he realized that hard work in this context was not a virtue. It was a slow-acting lobotomy. The lie is that if you work hard at something you hate, you will eventually buy your freedom. The truth, the Bukowski truth, is
that working hard at something you hate rewires your brain to accept misery as a baseline state. You become addicted to the cortisol. You become a creature that can only survive in high-pressure, low-reward environments. You destroy your capacity for joy because you have trained yourself to view joy as unproductive. But the horror runs deeper. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called learned helplessness. It was discovered by Martin Seligman. Dogs were shocked repeatedly with no way to escape. Eventually, when given an exit, they didn't take it. They just lay down and whined. They had learned that effort was futile, so they stopped trying to escape the pain. Bukowski identified the inverse of this, a pathology we haven't properly named yet. Let's call it learned masochism. This is where you are. You have been shocked by the system, the grades, the performance reviews, the debt, and instead of looking for the exit, You have convinced yourself that the shock feels good. You have eroticized your own exploitation. You wear your burnout like a badge of honor. I worked 80 hours this week. Why? To move numbers from one column to another? To buy a car that sits in a parking lot while you work to pay for it? Bukowski's "don't try" was a rejection of this learned masochism. When he wrote, he didn't force it. If he stared at the page and nothing came, he drank, he slept, he bet on horses, he waited. He understood that creativity, that life, is a force of nature, not a force of will. You cannot command a hurricane. You can only set your sails. But the establishment hates this. Think about it. If everyone stopped trying, stopped forcing themselves to fit into shapes that break their bones, the economy would collapse overnight. The economy runs on your insecurity. It runs on your belief that you are not enough, and that only through labor can you become enough. Bukowski knew he was a scumbag, a drunk, a loser by societal standards, and he was completely fine with it. That self-acceptance made him bulletproof. He didn't need their validation, so he didn't need their jobs. He kept the post office job only to survive, not to climb. And the very second he was offered a lifeline, a tiny stipend of $100 a month to write, he quit. He wrote, "I have one of two choices, stay in the post office and go crazy, or stay out here and play at writer and starve. I have decided to starve." But he didn't starve. And this is the glitch. This is the variable they hide from you. When he stopped trying to be a good worker, when he stopped trying to be respectable, when he stopped trying to write and just let the madness flow out of him, he became a millionaire. Wait, did you catch that? He didn't succeed despite not trying. He succeeded because he didn't try. The friction is the problem. You are pushing a boulder up a hill, Sisyphus. Bukowski stepped aside and let the boulder roll down, and he walked down after it, whistling. Now, we need to go darker. We need to talk about the biology of the grind. Cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. These are survival chemicals meant for short bursts of evasion or combat. Modern hustle culture keeps you marinated in this cocktail 24/7. This causes atrophy in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation. Literally, working too hard at things you don't care about causes brain damage. It shrinks your horizon of possibility. You become unable to imagine a future different from your present. Bukowski protected his mind by engaging in what the clinical world calls maladaptive coping mechanisms, but what he saw as survival: alcohol, gambling, isolation. I am not suggesting you become an alcoholic. I am suggesting that his refusal to engage with the stressor, his refusal to take the post office seriously, saved his brain from the atrophy that claimed his coworkers. He disassociated. He kept a part of himself in a vault, untouched.
Head by the machine. Most of you have no vault. You have given the keys to your boss. You have given the keys to the algorithm. You have seamless integration between your work self and your real self, and that is why you are dying. Let's peel back the second layer, the commodity of the soul. We live in an era where do what you love has been weaponized. It sounds benevolent. It is actually a trap. By telling you to do what you love, the system encourages you to monetize your passions. You love painting? Sell it on Etsy. You love writing? Start a Substack. You love gaming? Stream it on Twitch. The moment you attach a financial incentive to your joy, you introduce the over-justification effect. This is a psychological phenomenon where an expected external incentive, such as money or prizes, decreases a person's intrinsic motivation to perform a task. Bukowski wrote for decades without payment. He wrote on scraps of paper, on the backs of racing forms. He mailed them to underground magazines that paid him in copies of the magazine, if that. He didn't do it for the hustle. He did it because he had to excrete the demons. By trying to turn your passion into a career, you often murder the passion. You introduce deadlines to your art. You introduce market analysis to your soul. You start asking, will this perform well, instead of, is this true? Bukowski never asked if it would perform well. He wrote about boils on his ass. He wrote about vomiting in alleys. He wrote about women who hated him. He wrote the ugly, unvarnished, necrotic truth. And because he wasn't trying to please an audience, the audience became obsessed with him. Authenticity cannot be manufactured. It can only be revealed by removing the mask. Hard work is often just a very thick, heavy mask. It's a performance. Look at me. Look how busy I am. Look how much I suffer. I must be important. Stop. Look at your hands. Are they building something you want to live in, Or are they just building a cage for someone else? The third layer is the most insidious. It is the cult of delay. The Protestant work ethic relies on a theological promise: suffer now, be rewarded in heaven. Capitalism secularized this: suffer now, retire in Florida. It is a promise that life begins after the work is done. But the work is never done. The goalposts move. Inflation rises. The age of retirement pushes back. Bukowski lived in the now. It was a messy, chaotic, often violent now, but he inhabited it fully. He didn't defer his existence. If he wanted to drink, he drank. If he wanted to quit, he quit. There is a terrifying freedom in realizing that the future is a hallucination. There is only this room, this breath, this sentence. When you are trying, you are projecting yourself into a future result. I am trying to write a book means you are not writing. You are desiring the state of having written. I am trying to get fit means you are focused on the image in the mirror 6 months from now, not the lifting of the weight today. Don't try means be the action, not the desire for the result of the action. In the philosophy of Taoism, this is called Wu Wei, effortless action. Water does not try to flow, it simply yields to gravity and finds the path of least resistance, yet it can carve canyons through stone. Bukowski was, inadvertently, a drunken Taoist master. He found the path of least resistance through the American nightmare. He didn't fight the current, he floated on the debris. But here is where the story shifts. Here is where we approach the retention of the nightmare. You might be thinking, this sounds nice, but I have bills. I can't just drink wine and bet on horses. You are missing the point. The point is not the specific actions Bukowski took. It is the psychological posture he adopted. It is the refusal to internalize the external pressure. Imagine your energy is a currency. Right now you are spending 80% of it on resistance. You are resisting the fact that you don't want to be where you are. You are resisting the boredom. You are resisting the imposter syndrome. You are using massive amounts of energy just to maintain the facade of a functioning employee. What if you stopped resisting? What if you admitted, terrifyingly, to yourself, I hate this? That admission is the first step of not trying. It is the cessation of the lie. Once you stop using your energy to sustain the illusion, that energy becomes available for something else, something real. For Bukowski, the energy went into the typewriter. For you, it might go into a business, a relationship, a garden, a revolution. But it cannot go anywhere as long as it is tied up in the try. Now, we must descend to the final layer, the San Pedro patient. I promised you an open loop. I promised you a document. In the archives of the independent press, there are letters from Bukowski to editors, to friends, to lovers. But there is a specific correspondence from 1993, just months before he died of leukemia. He was weak. His immune system was gone. The machine finally had him. In this letter, he reflects on the don't try epitaph before it was even carved. He explains it, and the explanation is not what you think. He writes about watching a fly on the windowsill. The fly hits the glass, again, 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 buzzing, fighting, expending every ounce of its life force to get through an invisible barrier. It tries so hard, it works so hard, and it dies on the sill, a dry husk. Then he writes about a cat. The cat walks into the room, it sees the closed window, it does not bang its head against it. It walks to the door, it waits, it sleeps. Eventually, someone opens the door. The cat walks out. The fly is the hard worker. The cat is the don't try. The system wants you to be the fly. The system builds invisible walls, glass ceilings, red tape, social expectations, and encourages you to throw your body against them until you die. They call this grit. They call this hustle. Bukowski is telling you to be the cat. But wait, the microhook is sharp here. Being the cat requires something the fly does not have. The fly has blind instinct. The cat has patience and observation. The cat has to trust that the door will open, or it has to find another way. The cat requires faith in the chaos. Don't try is an act of supreme faith. It is the belief that if you do what is natural to you, if you follow your own inclination with absolute ruthlessness, the universe will eventually open a door. It is a gamble, a massive, terrifying gamble. And this is why they lied to you about hard work. Because hard work is a guarantee of mediocrity. It guarantees you a paycheck, it guarantees you a spot in the cemetery, but it guarantees you will never be great. Greatness requires the gamble. Greatness requires the refusal to compromise your nature for the sake of efficiency. Bukowski was a gambler. He bet his life on the idea that his voice, his ugly, drunk, broken voice, was worth more than a pension at the post office. Most of you are betting on the pension, and the pension is gone. The mystery of the open loop was the box I mentioned at the start, the mental prison. You are ready to see it now. The box is not the job. The box is the guilt.
The box is the voice in your head that screams, "You are lazy," whenever you rest. That voice was installed by your parents, by your teachers, by the media. It is a surveillance device. You are your own warden. "Don't try" is the command to disable the surveillance. When you sit down to work and you feel that grinding resistance, that desire to be anywhere else, stop. Do not push through it. Pushing through it reinforces the neural pathway that says suffering is necessary. Instead, ask, why is this resistance here? Is it because the task is hard, or is it because the task is wrong? Hard work on the right thing feels like play. It feels like mania. It feels like obsession. Bukowski
Wrote thousands of poems. He wrote 6 novels. He wrote short stories. That is a tremendous amount of volume. To an outsider, it looks like hard work. To him, it was just bleeding. You don't try to bleed, you just cut the vein. If you have to try to do your work, you are in the wrong line of work, or you are doing it for the wrong reasons. That is the diagnosis. The Bukowski truth is that effort is a signal. High effort with low joy is a warning from your biology that you are off the path. Low effort in terms of friction with high output is the signal that you have found the vein. We are reaching the end of the transmission. The world is getting harder. The economy is tightening. The pressure to grind is going to get heavier. The algorithms will demand more of your attention. The bosses will demand more of your time. The price of bread will go up. You have a choice. You can be the fly. You can buzz and bang and break yourself against the glass, convinced that if you just hit it one more time, you will break through. You will die on the sill. Or you can stop. You can step back. You can look at the room. You can find the door. It might mean quitting the job. It might mean disappointing your father. It might mean being poor for a while. It might mean being called a loser. But as Bukowski said, find what you love and let it kill you. Do not let what you hate kill you. That is the tragedy. The grave in San Pedro is silent. The traffic on the 110 freeway roars past it, millions of people rushing to jobs they hate, trying to be happy, trying to be rich, trying to be someone. And 6 feet under the grass, the old man is laughing. He knows the secret. He didn't try. And he won. The question is, are you brave enough to stop trying? End of tape.